What happens after homeless encampments in Bangor are closed and cleaned up? Will Wagner spoke to law enforcement and the city's homelessness response manager to learn more about the issue and how they respond to it.
There was a bunch of litter. People were using it as a bathroom. We trespassed a number of people for urinating or defecating in the park. We trespassed a number of people for using drugs in the park, for drinking in the park. We arrested quite a few people because it turned out they had warrants.
An encampment in Bangor's Davenport Park was recently cleared. According to Bangor police, most of those present were from surrounding communities.
It was known that you could come and you could get services very, very quickly. And that is not the case anymore. We used to be able to afford this, and now we can't. Now with 70 new faces, and the people that we meet, it's rare that you meet somebody that was living in Bangor and is now homeless in Bangor. You meet people that have become homeless somewhere else and have come to Bangor. We know they come to us from surrounding communities.
With one encampment cleared, it raises a question. What's next?
What we want to avoid is another situation where you have an entrenched encampment that exists for prolonged periods of time. That's what makes it really, really easy for people to kind of fall into these cycles of harm, particularly when you don't have really robust and comprehensive and concerted efforts around outreaching to folks, bringing services where people are.
Officials say in these situations, not everyone is open to help. However, for those who are, the city tries to find resources for them while keeping in mind that everyone's situation is unique.
We consolidate our resources and we go and tackle the problem, whether it's trying to get somebody into shelter or into housing or substance abuse treatment or whatever it is that they need. We try to get them to become agreeable and participate in it.
The question is always, who is there, what do we need, and what resources do we have available to respond to ensure that those folks are connected with appropriate services in a timely manner.
With colder nights ahead and a warming center closing down, officials are thankful for those stepping up to address the issue, as Bangor shelters often remain at capacity.
What we've seen is that community partners have really stepped up to fill in those gaps. The Mansion Church in particular is currently renovating their space to be able to accommodate an additional number of individuals that perhaps previously would have been served by Bangor area and now have another opportunity, to come inside during those particularly cold nights.
Will Wagner, WABI News, Bangor.